Black and White Network supporters, make sure you go over and check out the Black and White Network merchandise store. 25% off USA First. 25% off USA First. Go now. I'm back. Rudrance for our Black and White Network. Well, we're going to talk about Joe Rogan, Ron DeSantis. Yesterday, amongst everything else that Tulsi Gabbard did, she left the Democratic Party. We posted a video on that because she posted a video on that. She also posted a podcast of her own, and she went on Joe Rogan's podcast. Believe it or not, Joe Rogan got knocked out of the number one spot by the Kardashians. Honestly, I feel like that's a bad, poor, sickening indictment of where we are as a society. That people would, literally, more people would rather hear what Kim Kardashian's got to say than Joe Rogan. Now, look, Joe Rogan's still getting 11 million listeners a day and is like number 2. But you get my point. I mean, come on. That seems absurd to me right now. I got to be real. But that's fine. If you're into that, okay. I mean, it is what it is. Well, one of the things we've seen out of Joe Rogan is, in much the same way as Tulsi, much the same way as somebody like Bill Maher, and some of these other classical liberals, they look up and they find themselves in nowhere land, right? The left has went so far progressively left that they're now right of center, okay? Which is kind of strange. Now, Bill Maher might still be left of center, but I know he has praised Ron DeSantis and has talked about that he thinks he'd be a good presidential candidate. Well, Ron DeSantis is a Republican, by the way. Joe Rogan, in the past, has said Ron DeSantis would be a good candidate. Well, he doubled down on that yesterday when he had Tulsi Gabbard on his pod. So let's just take a look. We're going to hear a little bit of this clip, and then we'll just digest it a bit.
I mean, I think if they had someone like Ron DeSantis, who seems to be like the most reasonable amongst the potential candidates, he seems to be, a pretty no-nonsense guy, not without his flaws, but he's more reasonable than anything that I'm seeing on the left.
Yeah.
At least with the way he handled COVID.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where, as it's all playing out, there's this sense of hopelessness because there's not a clearly defined path where this country's ship gets righted. Mm-hmm. It's like I just see a lot of chaos and.
Okay, so that's where we're stopping because I don't want to get copyrighted either. On top of it, but he just comes right out and says Ron DeSantis seems like a more reasonable candidate, and I know for him and for Bill Maher, the pandemic was an eye-opener for both of them, right? Joe Rogan got drug under the bus because he didn't just automatically buy into everything that he had been told. When he come down with COVID, it turned into a shitstorm because he chose alternative ways of trying to treat it, and he used the I word out there to treat it. I can't even say it. Okay, the medicine I can't even say on the platform, for fuck's sakes, right? Sorry for the language, but that irritates me. It's so effing stupid, right? And vitamins and all this. It was Joe Rogan's show where I literally, the pandemic started like in February, and he had a doctor on his show in like the beginning of March that said, look, we're getting a lot of good success out of very high doses of vitamin D. Well, I heard her on Rogan's show. I go up to Walmart. I bought vitamin D, and I started taking it in very high doses, okay? By the way, I'm not giving anybody medical advice, YouTube, but you get the point. What he's got to say is valuable. Some of the people he has on is valuable. But, of course, the woke mob didn't like that, and they tried to cancel Joe Rogan over alternative views. They've tried to do the same to Bill Maher, because Bill Maher thinks the one thing that nobody even talked about in the pandemic was obesity being such a bad problem in this country, and so many people that did die were fat. That's a fact. A lot of people died that were 30 and 40 and 50 pounds overweight. pre-diabetic kind of thing, right? So anyway, and we know Ron DeSantis leaped out in the forefront and smacked the COVID the COVID experts right in the face and said, you know what? I'm seeing data that sort of discounts what you're saying right now. That's what I'm looking at. We saw it with his Surgeon General just came out, made a statement. Twitter censored his ass. Okay? I mean, and that's the exact point. But it's a big deal because this is a guy that once had Bernie Sanders. I think he may be the only politician he's actually had on his show is Bernie Sanders. This is how far Rogan feels burnt by the left, because it's the left that tried to burn him down. But he literally went from, I'm talking up Bernie, to saying now Ron DeSantis is a better presidential candidate than anybody the left is offering up right now. I mean, look, that's we'll just do it one more time, just in case you didn't quite hear that.
DeSantis, who seems to be like the most reasonable amongst the potential candidates. He seems to be, a pretty no-nonsense guy, not without his flaws, but he's more reasonable than anything that I'm seeing on the left.
Yeah.
I mean, look, that statement, and he's not wrong. I mean, when you're talking about defunding the police and open borders and just let's allow America to turn into Marxist chaos. Joe Rogan's saying Ron DeSantis is much more reasonable than anybody on the left. This kind of thing, and the reason I always play this kind of thing, look, I'm not going to hold what somebody says against them from 5 years ago. I saw a lot of that with Tulsi yesterday. You know why? People forget Trump was a Democrat at one point, okay? And do you have any idea how many Trump voters are ex-Democrats? Millions. Millions. You've got to be able to reach people, let them get into the real facts, and then sit back and go, I'm supporting the wrong thing here right now. I'm maybe what I thought I knew, I really didn't know, and that was those facts were in fact not fact. I'm changing parties. That is valuable to conservatives and Republicans. Absolutely valuable. Make sure you hit subscribe if you're either on YouTube or listening on the podcast. We're available everywhere that fine podcasts are in fact available. Peace. I'm out. Till next time.